Fleetwood Mac were a British band with American members, certainly at some points, and a worse than average turnover of members. And it's really hard to do their turbulent history justice in about a minute, which is what I budget for these introductions. They were formed as a blues band by several former members and current members at the time of John Mayall's Blues Breakers, who were a British band quite um, uh, fundamental to the British blues explosion. And they were put together by Peter Green. So, ironically, not one of the two whose names contribute to the band name, who are Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. This was 1967. After 3 years, so in 1970, there were some changes which added Christine Perfect, who became quite soon Christine McVie. She got together with John McVie. They started to be more pop rock. Around this time, Peter Green left twice, I think. At some point during this next few years, they took a break. Another version with which is generally considered now a fake version, toured under the name The New Fleetwood Mac. Um, by 1975, they were back doing stuff, and they were joined by Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. Um, and at that point, they became what a lot of people would consider their classic lineup. So some of their best success in that kind of 1975 onwards coincided with some romantic breakups and shake-ups within the band. Very turbulent internally. They became known for their breakup songs. Given what was going on, I'm really surprised they actually managed to continue to play together and sing together. They did have huge success. There was huge confusion, as I say, in the band. They're probably now at an end, given that Christine McVie died in 2023. But with the history of Fleetwood Mac, never say never. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of Tusk by Fleetwood Mac. This was their 12th studio album, and I have got a copy of this, but I've not really paid attention to it before. I gained a few Fleetwood Mac albums in 20 years or so now when I realised I liked some of their stuff. But I haven't really dug into them very strongly, which is one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to coming across that stuff as I come through it on this crazy thing that I'm doing of trying to review these 3,000 albums. It's a double album, and it comes after they've had some mega success, particularly their previous album was, if I'm right, Rumours. And Lindsey Buckingham, one of their members, wanted it to be more of an experimental album and to go off in a new direction. It particularly didn't want it to be getting into a kind of production mill of doing Rumours 2, Rumours 3, etc., and just reproducing over and over the same kind of stuff, which is what the label probably wanted them to do because that was commercially sound. So they were not hugely happy with this idea, as I say, but usually labels may be tarring them all with a huge, big, prejudicial brush. But I would say that labels tend to be more interested in sales than in artistry, potentially. So it's good that the artists fight for some kind of artistic integrity, maybe at times. Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry if you're a person who works for a label and you feel differently. If that's the case, or if you have a different perspective, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. So initially this sold well, and then it kind of fizzled, and it was considered a commercial failure. By which I mean that it only sold about 2 million copies or something like that. They spent a lot of money on making it, and it didn't necessarily, or they didn't necessarily work together well as a band. They've been very famous about internal tensions and romances and breakups and all sorts of turmoil. And I think on this occasion, it maybe didn't work in their favour as much as it has done on some of their albums. So apparently the others in the band agreed to allow Lindsey Buckingham to take this in a more experimental direction, mostly because, excuse me, they were fearing that if they didn't, that he would leave the band, and they wanted to keep the band together. Um, Bassist John McVie has been quoted by saying this album sounds like the work of three solo artists. And I agree. I very much feel like that kind of accounts for the way that the album is. So the strongest songs, to my mind, are the Stevie Nicks songs. Fairly straightforward pop rock, but some nice sentiments, some good songwriting in here, poignant at times, and nicely executed. She's got quite a distinctive voice, and I really like her voice. I always have. I think that she brings a kind of um, I'm not sure if authenticity is the right word, but she brings something with her singing that makes it feel like she is singing something that means that has got meaning for her, and it's a nice, sweet voice. And then Christine McVie's stuff is less memorable, but it's okay. Um, and if it was just between the two of those, it would not be so strange an album. But then back to Lindsey Buckingham, and so that just for context, the three of them share songwriting um, uh, work. Some of the others do get involved at times, and they tend to parcel out in the same way the lead vocals as well. So it's an album with three different people doing lead vocals, and Lindsey Buckingham probably has more than his share on here if you were to divide it up three ways. Um, but his stuff really does sound like it's from a completely different band. Some of his tracks apparently were recorded in his home studio and then overdubbed. He has a particular kind of rhythm that he seems to be very keen on, which is a kind of cha 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 cha, which feels like it's like two in a bar rather than four in a bar. And often some of the tracks are quite unusual percussively, and there's a particular kind of growly guitar sound that he seems to be using quite a bit, which makes it sound almost like brass with the guitar. Um, and then most of those tracks, I would say, sound unfinished. It sounds like they've got an idea, but they don't actually follow through anything in particular. I think that's probably just because they don't have a conventional structure to them. But I feel like the structure there isn't a structure. It's kind of it does some stuff and then it stops. Um, However, having said that, Tusk, which is one of his, um, and has singing from him and oh, apologies if I get this wrong, and Stevie Nicks. It might be Christine. It's probably, to my mind, the best track on the album. I believe it was a single and it did quite well. And it is unusual, but it is more rounded and more accomplished as a track, and it takes you somewhere. It's an interesting place. It's not straightforward as a track, uh, certainly acoustically, but it works in a way that some of his other tracks don't. I feel like overall, taking this as an album as a whole, it's a mess. It doesn't sound like they've spent 9 months and over $1 million on it. It sounds like they got to a point where they said, "Well, we're just going to have to get together what we've got and stick it out as an album and work out some kind of order to it." But it sounds like stuff is certainly in the writing and particularly Lindsey Buckingham's not as followed through as it could have been. It sounds disjointed and uncoordinated and focused and frankly unfinished. Um, but having said that, there are a few decent songs on it. So yeah, um, I feel like maybe they would have done better if they'd got to this point and then gone, right, let's pare this down to a single album rather than a double album and work out what are the best songs that fit together as a kind of art and make it a more focused album as it is. It's just a bit too wandering. And I think that maybe that's an expectation on my part that double albums need to have more of a point to them or more of an arc to them than maybe a single album does, just because the length that you're covering is a different kind of time span. So it's a different attention span thing. So it's that kind of length feels more like a film length to me rather than an album length. Anyway, that's my opinion. I'm a huge fan of the album. I think there's some songs on here that I like. I think it's a bit more than a bit kind of disjointed and not put together well. However, as always, I'd love to know what you think of the album. So can you let me know that by leaving me a comment, please? And that's it from me for now.